Welcome to the latest episode of the Real World Nutrition Podcast. This is episode 211, Vegetarian Nutrition Throughout the Lifespan. Hi everyone, welcome to the Real World Nutrition Podcast. I'm Shelly Rael, registered dietitian nutritionist, and today's episode is wrapping up the vegetarian series with a look at how vegetarian nutrition plays out across the lifespan. Now, if you haven't listened to the other two episodes in this series, each one can be listened to independently. It's not necessary for you to listen to all three of them. I do make references of things in other episodes. So just wanted to make that clear if you haven't heard them yet. Episode 209 was what does vegetarian mean? So the definitions. Episode 210, vegetarian myths and misconceptions, such as whether somebody can get enough protein or if a vegetarian diet is a healthier way of eating. And of course here, vegetarian nutrition through the lifespan. Now, nutrient needs are not static. They change depending on whether we're growing, pregnant, middle-aged, or older. A vegetarian diet can work well in every stage of life, but like with any diet approach or approach to eating, it does take some planning. So my goal today is to walk through what matters most at each stage of life, talk about nutrients that deserve a little bit more attention, and share some real-world ways to make it practical. So, first up, let's start with vegetarian diets in childhood. So let's start with kids. We're finding that I'm finding more often that kids, independent of their parents or family members, are wanting to have a vegetarian approach to eating. They may learn that how their food is coming from animals and may not like it. I've seen this more and more. So parents get concerned or will ask if vegetarian diets are safe for children. And the answer is yes, but as I said earlier, it requires some intentional planning. Kids are still in a very rapid growth state, which means they need enough calories, protein, and nutrients to support that growth. Now, the good news is that protein is not usually the biggest problem that people think it is. With foods like beans, lentils, eggs, dairy, tofu, nut butters, and soy products, kids can easily meet their needs. Where parents sometimes run into challenges is variety. A picky eater who only wants pasta or bread can get enough calories, but they might miss out on important nutrients like iron or zinc. Iron is particularly important in childhood, especially for toddlers and school-age kids. Plant-based iron from beans, lentils, spinach, and fortified cereals are not absorbed as well as iron from meat, but pairing those foods with a vitamin C source like strawberries, oranges, or bell peppers helps. Calcium and vitamin D are also key for bone growth, so including dairy or fortified plant milks is important. So the takeaway here for kids is focus on variety, include a source of protein at meals and snacks, and make sure there are reliable sources of iron, calcium, and vitamin D. Now, let's address teens and adolescents. So moving into the teenage years, growth and development ramp up again, and nutrition becomes even more critical. Weird to say that. Nutrition is critical throughout life, but there's a lot of times where teens are missing out on very specific nutrients regardless of their approach to eating. Teens need a higher amount of calories, protein, iron, and calcium to support the growth spurts and increased activities. Now, for vegetarian teens, the challenges are less about the nutrients themselves and more about food choices. Some teens decide to become vegetarian without a lot of planning. So if their diet is mainly pizza, fries, and energy drinks, they may not be getting the nutrients they need. So this is when a conversation about balance is essential. And whether somebody's a vegetarian or not, if their diet is mainly pizza, fries, and energy drinks, again, balance is essential. So again, with vegetarian eating and teens and adolescents, iron is a big nutrient of concern here, especially for teen girls who have an increased iron need due to menstruation. Low iron levels can lead to fatigue, difficulty concentrating, and poor performance in schools and sports. Vegetarian iron sources like beans, lentils, and fortified cereals, as I said before, paired with vitamin C, are key. And calcium continues to matter since adolescence is when peak bone mass is being built. During our teen years, this is the time of highest calcium need. And most people at this age fall short. B12 should also be on the radar, so if dairy and eggs are included, that helps. But if not, B12, a B12 supplement, or fortified foods are necessary. So the takeaway for teens, encourage balanced meals. Reinforce the importance of protein, iron, and calcium, and make sure B12 is not overlooked. Now, this next group, pregnancy and lactation. So pregnancy brings a new level of nutrient needs, and for vegetarians, some extra care is important. People can be vegetarian and vegan during pregnancy. And we need to address that protein requirements increase, as do needs for, here's the iron again, iron, folate, and omega-3 fatty acids. So folate is often managed well since many vegetarian foods like beans and leafy greens are good sources, but it's still essential to take a prenatal vitamin or what is recommended by your healthcare practitioner. Iron is a bigger concern. Even with good planning, it can be difficult to meet pregnancy iron needs without supplementation. And many pregnant people need an iron supplement regardless of their diet, whether they're vegetarian or not. Once again, B12 is another nutrient that we can't overlook. So again, if eggs and dairy are not included, a supplement is necessary. Omega-3 fats like DHA are important for fetal brain and eye development. And vegetarians can get ALA from flax, chia, walnuts, and canola oil, but DHA supplements made from algae may be worth considering. So DHA comes from ocean life, so the seafood, and ALA is the omega-3 that comes from plant foods, and our bodies do tend to prefer the DHA, so we need to be aware of that. Now, during lactation, calorie needs are still higher, and hydration is so important. Protein, calcium, B12, and that DHA continue to matter for supporting both the parent and the infant. So the takeaway for pregnancy and lactation, supplementation is often necessary, especially for iron, B12, and DHA. Balanced, varied meals support both parent and baby. Now, I want to make this clear. Before just gravitating and going to supplements, do talk with the person, the healthcare provider you're working with during prenatal care, because we don't want to just randomly have a bunch of iron coming in without it being mentioned or addressed by your healthcare provider. All right. For adults, I don't know why we don't pay too many attention to adults because whatever, it just tends to be an afterthought, but I say this in my classes too. We talk about and focus on the various stages of childhood, and then we jump to older adults. But let's get with adults. For adults, vegetarian nutrition, again, is often about balance and long-term health. Protein, fiber, and healthy fats should be a regular part of meals. And many adults thrive on vegetarian diets, especially when meals include a mix of the whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, vegetables, and fruits. So I've mentioned this in the other episodes in more detail. Now, B12, again, is the nutrient that is most consistently requiring a supplementation or fortified foods. B12 is only found in foods of animal origin. So if it's vegan, B12 supplement is necessary in many cases. But grains are often fortified with B12, so we want to double check. But if somebody's having dairy and eggs, they can get B12. So then it's more just being aware of what type of vegetarian and whether they need it. Iron, zinc, and calcium should also be checked, especially for women of childbearing age, because those are times where women want to be prepared for bearing children. Omega-3 is, again, another consideration. Heart health often improves with vegetarian diets, but those omega-3 fats are still really important. So the takeaway for adults: vegetarian diets can provide everything for good health, but variety is key. And B12 almost always needs special attention. All right, now last up, older adults. Now I just want to make this clear. What is defining an overadult just varies on who you are, who you ask. And generally speaking, we're referring to older adults, 65 and older, but it can also be 75 and older, 85 and older. There's 3 different categories. As of 2025, that was considered older adults. So there's subcategories within that. However you define it, that's fine. Just be aware of some of the needs as we get older. Because as we age, our calorie needs often decrease, but the nutrient needs stay the same or even increase. So people need less food, but they need to be much more aware of the nutrient quality of that food. So older adults may need more protein to help maintain muscle mass and prevent sarcopenia, the natural decline of muscle mass with age. B12 absorption decreases with age regardless of diet. So even people who do eat animal foods, B12 absorption decreases. So supplementation, again, is often needed. And calcium and vitamin D are especially important for bone health. Now, some other things that applies to older adults regardless of their diet approach to eating: appetite changes, dental issues, changes in taste can make eating more difficult. So soft, protein-rich foods like yogurt, smoothies, lentil soups, or scrambled eggs can help. Fiber from oats, beans, and fruits can help maintain digestive health. Now, on a side note here, as I said, the older adults definition varies based on age as well as maybe what stage of life you are in. But the other challenge with this is we can have 2, 3, 10 people the same age, but have very different needs depending on their health. You can have 85-year-olds who are very active. You can have 75-year-olds who are actually very inactive and have a lot of disease. So it's not just the age, but also what other disease states may be there and how active the person is. So the takeaway for older adults: focus on nutrient density, prioritize protein and B12, and include plenty of calcium and vitamin D. All right, everyone, let's wrap this up. Vegetarians can support good health at every age, but the details shift depending on the stage of life. Kids need enough protein and iron for growth. Teens need balance and attention to iron and calcium. Pregnancy brings higher demands for protein, iron, folate, B12, and omega-3. And adults need variety, and older adults benefit from nutrient-dense, protein-rich foods. So the consistent theme across all ages is that vegetarian diets work best when planned with intention. Supplements for B12 and sometimes iron or omega-3s may be necessary. With variety and planning, vegetarian eating can be a lifelong approach to health. But as I said in other episodes, there aren't rules. Nobody's going to tell you you're right or wrong if you change how you're eating throughout your life. It's all your choice. So with that wraps up this episode of Real World Nutrition, as well as this 3-part series on vegetarian eating and ensuring that it's a healthy approach to eating. Okay, with that, as I said, thanks for joining me with this episode. Stay tuned for next week where another episode drops. I have actually 2 episodes coming up talking about seafood, what it is, and what the benefits are, and many aspects of that. So if you follow this show, subscribe to it. You can sign up for my newsletter as well using the link in the show notes. Head to the website. You can find out what episodes have come out in the past week, what's coming up, and stay informed. All right, everyone. And with that, you take care and bye for now.